it's been very frustrating. I've been reflecting on this a lot, right? Because I feel like I imagine all of us are in the same boat. I've just been going a mile a minute all year. And like today was like the first day that I got to actually sort of like sit and reflect. So there's been like a jumble of emotions catching up with me. And I was reflecting on the fact that, yeah, I mean, like, at the Real News Network, I and my colleague Mel Buer have been covering the crisis on the railroads all year, right? Through extended interview after extended interview with workers in different parts of the industry, people who've been in the industry for different lengths of time, right? I mean, just really hearing their stories and then trying to get people to pay attention to those, only to have like the mainstream media and the politicians in DC suddenly take an interest when we were like literally at the 11th hour before a potential rail shutdown, both in September and earlier this month. And, I think that a lot of folks have been asking me of late, like, well, what could Democrats have done different, like in that situation? And I guess the thing that I would just sort of say, and this kind of goes to Margaret's point, is like, frankly, there's only so much that any politician could do in that point. And I think that everyone has a stain on their record by the fact that they didn't give a shit about this until it was at the last minute, right? Like none of this was new. This stuff has been going on for longer than like the current stints of anyone in Congress, except like maybe like the old fogies. But like railroad workers and unions and the Surface Transportation Board, Marty Oberman, chairman, have been like screaming about this for years, saying like, hey, billionaires like Warren Buffett are literally destroying the supply chain by running workers into the ground, by price gouging their own customers and jacking up prices on shippers. The ports are backed up to hell and everyone is pissed off about it. And yet, the billionaires who own these companies are raking in more profits than they ever have. Stock buybacks and shareholder dividends are higher than they've ever been. Like, this is not a new problem. But when you have two ruling class serving parties that genuinely don't actually care about working people, but just want to sort of kind of make a symbolic show of who's a greater friend of the worker, capital F, capital W, it's just all some BS like cosplaying that I'm frankly like fed up with, right? Because there are ways that actually the Democrats, Biden, Congress like could have done more to help railroad workers if they actually gave a shit about this issue back when negotiations were still going on, right? Think about how the situation played out. And apologies to anyone if you've heard me like kind of make this point before, but I think it's important, right? Yeah. If you are the railroad carriers, right, who have been destroying a vital part of our supply chain for years because your Wall Street backers have recognized you can juice a lot of profit out of it at the expense of workers, at the expense of consumers, at the expense of everyone but the shareholders, right? If that is your MO, right, and no one is doing anything to stop you, what incentive do you have to stop? What incentive do you have to even bargain in good faith? Like the contract negotiations that led us to the point of a potential national rail strike or rail lockout have been going on for 3 years. And all the while, these carriers have just been able to sit at the table, cross their arms, because they knew if it ever got to this point, whether it was Biden or George Bush, like whoever was in office was going to side with the rail bosses, just like they did in 92. They were going to shove a deal down workers' throats. They weren't going to address any of the key workplace safety issues, quality of life issues, like any of the issues that like really kind of that workers have been saying like comprise the total crisis that they are experiencing on the railroads. It's not just sick days. Sick days became kind of the stand-in for the larger crisis. And we couldn't even address that, right? Even though we very well could, and Biden very well could right now if he damn well wanted, but he doesn't. And so, again, think about the position that we were in the long run. If Biden had been using the bully pulpit, if any people in Congress had been like making a stink about the corporate, robbery that is playing out in front of us in broad daylight. If they had been putting actual pressure on the rail carriers, highlighting their, corporate malfeasance, maybe that would have given workers a bit more leverage at the bargaining table, because it would have put in the carriers' heads, oh shit, maybe this is a more pro-union Democratic Party. Maybe they do actually care about the workers. Maybe we should give a little more instead of constantly trying to take and take and take. And so they didn't do that, obviously. And then we ended up in the situation we were in September and December, where suddenly, everyone's heart bleeds for the workers, but they got to make like tough decisions. Like, no, to Margaret and Harvey's point, if you weren't fucking tweeting all the goddamn time, if you weren't like actually just concerned about manicuring your public image, if you actually dug deep and did what you can using your position to support the workers who put you in office, maybe we would be in a better position. Maybe the coal miners at Warrior Met Coal, who have been on strike for over 600 days, would have more leverage at the bargaining table if any Democratic or Republican politician was actually showing up to help them. None really have. Right now, it is sub-zero temperatures, and workers at CNH Industrial in Iowa and Wisconsin are on the picket line, freezing their asses off. They need help. They need people to donate to their hardship funds, their strike funds, and all of that. But what they also need is people in the media and in DC giving a shit about this, because if they don't, bosses are just going to keep waiting workers out. They're going to wait for the public attention to fade away. Like this, I guess, is my airing of grievances, if it wasn't already clear, right? Is that we all have a role to play here. We all have to have sustained attention in these struggles. We have to be there when it counts. When people are freezing their asses off on the picket line, they need to know that we're still behind them. And it's baffling to me that the railroads have just disappeared from public consciousness in the span of like 2 weeks, when it was all anyone was talking about before.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not convenient for people to think about that. If the railroad workers went on strike, well, then people wouldn't get what they want immediately. It's very upsetting to me, the whole concept of a strike is fuck you, we're not taking it anymore, and we are the power here, and we're going to go do this. And the fact that we've created a system where people need permission basically to strike. And it's almost like the fact that the executive branch can shut it down, that defeats the whole purpose of the concept of a labor uprising. The whole thing is ridiculous to me. The fact that any Democrat would look at this and not think, this hasn't happened to labor since Reagan, basically. I mean, this is ridiculous, and nobody's pointing it out. And I actually get emails from people inside the party, praising Biden for and I'm thinking, are we watching the same thing? What are you praising him for? But I want to just say, in terms of airing of grievances, I think we can say that this year specifically, the railroad situation is definitely in my top 3 grievances as to how that was handled or not handled. And I agree. It doesn't matter who's in that office. Nobody's going to allow them to strike.
Right. I also have a grievance about the media. I mean, there has been the networks, they clearly were siding with the railroad, siding with Biden, hostile questions to the union representatives. These great newspapers, quote unquote, New York Times, Washington Post, never clearly spelled out how this could be resolved in favor of the workers. They're mouthpieces for the ruling class. That is the only way I can describe the corporate media, that these very simple points that we've all made are just buried. And unless you know where to look, you don't know any of this.
Yeah, we're fighting. And I know it isn't just sick days, quite honestly, but Max, whatever it is, right, that these workers are wanting, I have no doubt is completely reasonable and within the realm of what working people should have, right? Nothing we're talking about, the fact that they're fighting over it, that's shameful. Because whatever it is, and I don't need to know every little technical point of it, I am sure that it is all within the realm of how workers should just be treated in general. And that our president would step in and say, yeah, no, just, be happy with the crumbs that you're getting and go home. It's insulting.
And it is amazing how, collectively trained SEALs, the vote blue no matter who crowd really is. They say, oh, it's all the Republicans' fault. And I said, the president asked for a bill to prevent workers from striking. Like, what universe are we living? I mean, honestly, like Margaret, when you first came on, you said it must be good to be stuck in the matrix. I'm like, yeah, I guess for them it is, because they just will not look at reality. The reality is we have a shitty president, and the worst possible time to have a shitty president is when a populist uprising on the right, which can lead to fascism, is happening because people are getting sick of this shit. And
please understand that you could see this in a few of the Republicans who voted, in quotes, on the side of the workers. Okay, the right-wing populists like Hawley, okay, who have been smart these last few years. I mean, I've written about Hawley in particular. They are making a gamble that they can pull off this kind of right-wing populism without necessarily screwing capitalism. And that is Hawley has ambitions, but generally speaking, he's not viewed well by a lot of the corporate, which is the overwhelming majority of the Republican congressional seat holders. He's not viewed favorably, but there are others like him. He knows how Reagan got elected.
Yes.
Because Carter screwed the working class. And workers did not turn out to vote in 1980, and Reagan beat Carter. So, and what Hawley figures is, as he develops this following, and we already know that workers, white, black, and brown, are slowly but surely sort of bleeding away from the Democrats and voting Republican. These folks are going to be smart. As long as the Democrats are only worried about their upper middle class suburban voters, they'll lose the working class. And, frankly, I wouldn't blame any of them for not turning out to vote, given what they've seen. I mean, seriously.
Thanks for watching. If you want to support our mission to transform politics into service, please like this video, subscribe, follow us on social media, and consider joining our Patreon, where you'll get early access to our interviews as well as other exclusive content. Links are in the description. Peace out.